This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
The biggest icon in podcasting.
Welcome in, everybody, to this week's episode of the DocNJock Wrestling Podcast. I'm your host, Adam the Jock Straczynski. On today's show, this is your Royal Rumble Go Home podcast. Also, The Rock has a new gig. Monday Night Raw has a new home. More changes coming to WWE commentary. This is going to be a very, very WWE TKO-centric podcast because we've got to get into some news that's not earth-shaking or groundbreaking. And, I mean, basically it falls in the same category as water is still wet. But Vince McMahon is an awful human being, and there's another lawsuit. And we're going to get into all of that, helping me break it all down, sort through the gory, awful details. He's the one. He's the only. He's the Doc, John Macaroon. What's up, cuz?
Man, I thought we were just going to record, talk about the Royal Rumble, surprises, female surprises, male surprises. But on Thursday, oh my goodness, days after a monumental announcement from TKO regarding the future of Raw, you get this crazy report from obviously a lawsuit from Mrs. Grant that we all thought, based in 2022, was settled. Obviously, we all understand, we recapped it here with Vince McMahon, obviously getting booted, and then obviously there were situations behind the scenes legally that took place. You thought that once he came back, that everything was settled. But my goodness, just like everybody else, I don't know, cuz, how much time you spent checking it all out, but I was reading the text messages. Kenny, of course, was breaking it all down, reading the allegations regarding those involved. And it's just allegedly, obviously, this is what went down. Vince McMahon did put out a statement indicating that this is all totally false and he'll defend himself vigorously. But by and large, if what's alleged is being true, clearly Vince McMahon can't be part of TKO. And just like, you know, all these corporations and all these companies that have it happen in Hollywood as well, it's not so much the person that did it. Clearly they will get what's deserved based on facts. But what's going to really corrupt a lot of people is the discovery of who knew what when. Was this a massive cover-up? Was this something that an entire culture was developed in WWE? It's terrible. It's really disgusting and disturbing. We're not going to read the text messages, but bottom line, if what's alleged is true, then Vince McMahon is a predator of the most dangerous variety. And not only that, but to involve corporate officials, to involve your superstars, to kind of treat someone less than human, allegedly, is crazy. What was your reaction? Because when I was reading those texts, I was just like, oh my God, who talks this way? Who pens stuff like that to that vulgar degree? I mean, we're talking text upon text about nasty things that Vince wanted done to him and the schedule and what ideas that he had. It was really the definition in my mind, cause of perverse. That was the definition of perverse, was what was in those texts.
Yeah, look, I wasn't really surprised. I mean, this is now the, 374th lawsuit against Vince McMahon. I know it's a bit of an exaggeration, but we've heard about all these things before. And let's give a little bit of background into kind of what's being alleged here. So I'll give you parts of what was in this lawsuit. On January 25th, 2024, again, another lawsuit filed against Vince McMahon, WWE, John Laurinaitis, and the lawsuit also implies that Brock Lesnar had some improprieties, although it doesn't name him by name. Rather, it describes him as a former UFC champ and a former WWE wrestler. This time, it's by a former WWE employee, and I believe we covered one of these lawsuits with her before, Janelle Grant. Trying to remember and kind of parse through all of the lawsuits that we've gone through, I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty close to sure that we've covered this before. Grant goes on to say she was a victim of physical and emotional abuse, sexual assault, and sex trafficking at WWE. The lawsuit goes on to describe how Vince McMahon and Grant lived in the same housing complex and met there in March of 2019 when Miss Grant was dealing with some grief from her family passing away and some financial struggles. They basically met through a residential manager. That's how McMahon and Grant had their formal introduction. The lawsuit goes on to say that McMahon befriended Miss Grant, giving her hopes of a new life with promises of a yet-to-be-determined role at WWE, and showering her with attention and assurances along with gifts like a VIP experience at WrestleMania. But what seemed like a dream in the spring of 2019, they met in March of 2019, quickly became a nightmare. McMahon dangled career-making and life-changing promises in front of Miss Grant. The lawsuit continues. He demonstrated an increasing lack of boundaries. During several meetings that were about a potential job at WWE, he greeted her in his underwear, touched her, repeatedly asked her for hugs, and spent hours sharing intimate details about his personal life. McMahon also threatened Ms. Grant to keep their closeness secret, lest rumors lead to public troubles, and added that while he protects loyal people, he has world-class legal resources on speed dial to deal with people who become a problem. The lawsuit proceeds to say that McMahon pushed Ms. Grant for a physical relationship in return for a long-promised employment at WWE. She felt trapped in an impossible situation, submitting to McMahon's sexual demands or facing ruin. Ms. Grant eventually was slotted into an entry-level position as an administrative coordinator, a position that McMahon created for her in his WWE legal department. Grant began working that role on June 17th of 2019. Grant would then be moved around within WWE as far as her job with the company went. The lawsuit would continue despite Grant's expression of unhappiness and the attempt to end their sexual relationship. She came to understand that McMahon expected the physical relationship to continue as part of their employment. In March of 2020, McMahon began sharing sexually explicit photographs and videos of Miss Grant, including pornographic content he recorded with other men both inside and outside the company, including with members of the television production tech team, executives, producers, and a world-famous athlete and former UFC heavyweight champion with whom WWE was actively trying to sign a new contract, and ultimately he did sign that contract. That would be Brock Lesnar. The lawsuit goes on to describe a lot more awful stuff. Like you said, you read through the text messages. They are absolutely perverse and depraved. They are awful. Now, the relationship ended with Vince and said that Linda found out and requested her to be fired. That was what stopped all of this. Vince then had Grant sign a NDA and offered to pay her, I believe it was $3 million, which he allegedly stopped paying after $1 million. This brings us to why we now have the lawsuit. She is seeking the rest of that money and more. Now, a spokesman for Vince McMahon gave the following statement to Deadline in response to the suit. This lawsuit is repellent with lies, obscene, made-up instances that never occurred, and a vindicated distortion of the truth. He will vigorously defend himself. TKO, the company that now owns WWE, WWE's parent company, for which McMahon serves on the executive chairman of the board, told Variety, Mr. McMahon does not control TKO, so now TKO is a little bit distancing themselves here, nor does he oversee the day-to-day operations of WWE. While this matter pertains to our TKO executive team's tenure at the company, we take Mrs. Grant's horrific allegations very serious and are addressing the matter internally. Now, later on in the show, we're going to talk about The Rock getting a new gig, being part of the board of TKO. This might explain why The Rock was brought on. To me, when all this gets settled, there was a release from TKO earlier in the year earlier last year when Vince was removed from the creative process and basically designated on the executive board, and it alleged and it kind of alluded to some of this. So this might be a way for TKO to maybe insulate themselves by bringing The Rock on as part of the board. What are your thoughts with TKO's stance? It seems like they're almost distancing themselves with this statement about Vince McMahon, and then possibly The Rock's role in maybe taking over for Vince.
Yeah, no, I mean, the man's beyond his due to be removed from the company. I mean, what is he really adding? Yeah, he's got years of experience, but that's all been funneled to Triple H. This is beyond, it's going to send the stock down after it was rising. This is never good for a publicly traded company. And you look at it, and by all accounts, this is disturbing. And everybody's piling on. You got guys like Ryback, Lance Storm are coming out and saying, you guys think this is bad. This is the tip of the iceberg. Wait till the truth comes out. So a lot of people were whispering that Vince McMahon was willing to potentially harm people's livelihood based on his need for power, allegedly. So I'm just, when you look at it, it's disturbing, and it's time for WWE and TKO to move forward. And really, you have to, and I think if there are real journalists that are going to be following this at the highest levels, you have to acknowledge who knew what when these investigations take place. You have to clear the air. You have to establish that we are not we're not a company that it has a culture like this. You got to establish, boards and committees, and obviously let everybody know that that's not tolerated. Because how are you going to have females feel comfortable in the locker room, rocking around backstage? How are you going to promote that kind of company to your daughter when you say, hey, look at the owner of the company, this perverse old man that's potentially taking advantage of women, and maybe even, more women will come out and discuss that, hey, my opportunities were dependent on some stuff I needed to do allegedly with Vince McMahon. So it's unfortunate. It's disturbing. It's really bad all the way around. And I think they need to act swiftly. And I know we always believe here at the podcast, innocent until proven guilty. But there's always that age-old adage where there's smoke, there's fire. And sometimes you just realize, look, someone's persona and their being is just going to cause more controversy than what it's worth. The man left his legacy. The crazy part is he still owns a big, huge chunk. He sold off 700 million shares or whatever he did, but he still owns a big chunk. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. Does he survive this? What the legal ramifications are going to be? What the impact of the stock is going to be? But all in all, it's been a bad week now. It marred what should have been a special week for WWE.
For sure. This is one of our favorite weekends. We both love the Royal Rumble. And look, like you said, where there's smoke, there's fire. And at this point, with Vince McMahon in these sexual assault allegations, there is basically a burning, massive apartment complex. It's not like there's just a little bit of smoke off in the woods. No. There is a 6-alarm fire that is going on. Like, this is not the first time these have been alleged. These are not. And there's this repeated course of conduct that he constantly does and is constantly being accused of. So again, like you said, where there's smoke, there has to be fire. This is not the first time that we've heard about this. Not the first time you and I have discussed this. So to me, it seems, and I am of a firm belief that these allegations are true. It'll be interesting to see what happens as this goes through the legal process. But more to your point, internally within WWE, I was thinking about this when I was reading through all this stuff. How does a wrestler like a Becky Lynch, like a Bianca Belair, like a Sonya Deville, like a Bayley, like these female wrestlers, a Natalia, how do they feel when they have to go into Vince's office and talk to him? How did they feel when they had to be basically in the same room with him? And it's like, at a certain point, like you said, your persona kind of it precedes you. When you're around somebody who's just a little bit off, just a little bit different, and it has to make you uncomfortable. And look, we're in a completely different day and age than we were, say, in the 70s, say in the 80s, say in the 90s. This is all that time when Vince was accumulating all of this power. And there are stories that go back decades about him doing this. So to me, this doesn't seem like it is so far-fetched. This doesn't seem like it is so off the reservation. This seems like it is just a normal course of behavior that happened within WWE, and you were either with the program or you weren't with the program. And if you weren't with the program, you weren't getting a run. And to me, you can't function as a company like that. With TKO coming in, this might be the best thing for WWE. It might be the best thing for this corporation, because TKO can now kind of push themselves away from the old man and help distance him and basically show him the door, saying he's not part of this company no more. That was a bygone era. And like you said, this is one of the best times of year. This is one of the most exciting times of year. The Royal Rumble is one of those special events, one of those special pay-per-views that we get pumped up for, that we get excited for, and it makes it a little bit difficult when you've got this cloud hanging over it just days before the Royal Rumble takes place. All this news comes out and gets announced. So it'll be interesting to see how WWE kind of, I don't want to say sidesteps this, but kind of works its way through it. It'll be interesting to see what happens with WWE and the legal battle that's going to ensue. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with Vince McMahon in all of this. But all that being said, we've got the Royal Rumble. You ready for some predictions?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's get into it. But real fast, want to end on this, just common sense wise. Obviously, text messages are traceable, all that. But the common sense way in which you look at it from Vince's side only, not to justify, obviously, we don't condone that kind of behavior. But if you look at it, the one thing common sense wise would be, what if Vince says this was consensual? She wanted this. Like, this is a money grab. This was something that, yes, was vulgar, but this was consensual. There was no, why didn't, if someone's aggressive and has an attorney, why didn't she block him? Why didn't she go to the police? Why didn't she do these things? Why are there all these opportunities for her to want to be around these wrestlers? Let's look at it from the perspective of, she wanted this. She wanted the power. She wanted the gain. She wanted the opportunity to gain clout. And this was something where once the gain for her personally stopped, then she went on this malicious attack. That's why these kind of things are always messy, because it boils down to he said, she said, and Vince's lawyers are not going to be like, oh, dear, let's support you in your time of need. They're going to rip her apart.
Well, here's the thing. Vince has some of the best attorneys in the world.
They're going to rip
His
her
legal
apart.
team is sick.
Yes, they're going to rip her apart.
But, I mean,
it's going to be crazy.
This was a dude who was able to survive the steroid allegations
Yes.
back in the 80s. And that was a huge deal. So, like, he's able to kind of navigate and weather these awful storms that kind of come his way that he creates himself. And he's got such a good legal team where he's almost like he's a Teflon Don, man. Like, it is nuts. It's almost
because it's crazy, because I would look at it like this. If she's asking for 3, I'm like, look, babe, here's 5. Go away, lock, sealed, NDA. You are never to speak of this, or you got to pay me back 6.5, and you move on. I think that for a guy that's a billionaire, $7 million or $5 million is a drop in the hat. That's like a weekend out. So I would have looked at it like, you know what? Why would you even allow this to get to this point? Pay and move on. And it's disturbing, but Vince, you reap what you sow, and it's going to be crazy to see how this lingers moving forward.
Yeah, for sure. Let's get into some predictions. This is a surprisingly small card. When I was going through and looking for matches, I was kind of shocked. We don't have more at the time of recording. Now, card is always subject to change, and I do anticipate there maybe being 1 or 2 more matches added to this card. But right now, as it sits, we've got 4 matches for this card, which is remarkably tiny to me. But this is something that Triple H has leaned into, something that Triple H has likened himself to, giving us more concise pay-per-views with longer match runs, which I'm all aboard. I'm not sure how you feel about that. Are you surprised at the length of this card?
Well, when you look at it, I think the prime window is 2.5 hours to 3 hours, and 2 of the matches take an hour each or more.
Exactly.
So
exactly,
you don't really need the Royal Rumble really doesn't need more than the 2 matches and some title matches. So I'm not maybe some more tag teams, but I'm not really terribly surprised knowing how Triple H has run things as of late, and I'm happy. I hope it runs 2.5 to 3 hours.
For sure. And that's, like you said, that is the optimal window. We don't need a 5 or 6 hour pay-per-view like AEW likes to give us. So let's kick this thing off. We've got our United States Championship match. We've got Logan Paul versus Kevin Owens. If you followed anything on social media, you can see that they got into a little bit of a backstage brouhaha. Who wins this? Logan Paul is defending his championship belt against KO. It'll be interesting to see if KO gets to use his casted hand. Who do you got winning?
Yeah, no, I when you look ahead to WrestleMania, I definitely want to see Logan Paul versus LA Knight, and I just think that Kevin Owens is great to help elevate Logan Paul, and Kevin Owens can easily handle a loss. It won't derail his momentum, and the use of the video footage from the Performance Center was classic, and I like the fact that Logan Paul is a champion that people can truly hate, and this match, I think, is going to get violent and is going to go places that people are not going to expect. It's going to be crazy.
For sure. And look, I agree with you. I think you laid it out perfectly. I think Logan Paul wins this. I think you are building towards something bigger at WrestleMania. Maybe that's with a guy like LA Knight. Maybe it's with a guy like AJ Styles. We'll see what takes place there. But like you said, Kevin Owens can withstand the loss. It's not going to hurt him. Kevin Owens is a great way to help build up Logan Paul, who is, in our estimation, he's been absolutely fantastic since he's come into this business. He's been absolutely awesome. So we both got Logan Paul winning this one. We then move on to the undisputed WWE Universal Championship match. Roman Reigns defending against AJ Styles, against LA Knight, against Randy Orton. It's a fatal four-way match. I'm going to pick for both of us. I think we both got Roman Reigns winning this. I think this will be an interesting match. I think this will be a good match. But I don't see AJ Styles, LA Knight, or Randy Orton coming away the victor. I think we've got a bigger prize on the horizon at WrestleMania with Roman Reigns retaining the belt. Do you agree?
Absolutely. It's going to be fun. I think there's going to be a lot of false finishes. I think the LA Knight, AJ Styles will probably each have an opportunity to get a false finish, and maybe some craziness is going to ensue. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, what can you expect? Solo's going to come down and interfere. There's going to be some interference. They love to run it, and we'll see how it plays out. But yeah, I think the whole wrestling world would be shocked if Roman Reigns doesn't leave the Royal Rumble with the title.
All right. This is where I can make some ground up on you. We've got two Royal Rumble matches. We've got the women's and we've got the men's. I currently trail you by 3 points in our predictions. Now, if you pick the correct winner of the Royal Rumble, you get a bonus point. If you predict the correct winner of the men's Royal Rumble, you get another bonus point. If you overall predict the entire card correctly, you get another point. So these predictions that we have with these next two could really swing the balance of where we're at as far as our yearly game goes with our predictions. Again, I trail by 3 points. It is 11.5 to 8.5. You have the lead with the women's Royal Rumble match. Now, we've got Bayley, we've got Becky Lynch, we've got Bianca Belair, we've got Nia Jax. There are 26 other contestants who are to be determined. I'm assuming we'll see Michelle McCool because she's here all the time for this. I'm assuming that we get to see Jade Cargill for the first time. Possibly Sonya Deville comes back as well. What do you think the chances are that we get Jade Cargill in this match? What do you think the chances are of Jade Cargill possibly winning the Royal Rumble?
Oh, it'd be great. I think it'd be a nice pop, but I don't think you send her straight to the moon. In my opinion, the surprises will be great. You hope for a little bit more surprises than what we got last year. I thought last year's Rumble was straightforward and pretty predictable. So I'm looking at it like Jade would be great. Yes, returning. Sonya Deville would be great. Maybe even Sasha Banks if it's an outside-the-box situation. Maybe even...
Maybe Mickie James.
Mickie James, Trinity makes her return back.
Oh, yeah, Trinity for sure. Trinity's for sure going to be in this. Yes. I totally forgot about that. Trinity will for sure be in this.
But my pick, and I think I'm confident based on what's needed to give them a storyline, based on her devastation of not being in past WrestleManias, Bayley is my choice to win it all. I think that she is a character that's on the rise. They've been teasing the split with Damage Control. She needs to have something, a boost, to keep her fresh and to keep her motivated and an opportunity moving forward at one of the biggest shows of the year at WrestleMania. I think it makes a perfect sense. Jade will be a factor. All the surprises will be important, but in my mind, Bayley has to win it.
This sucks because Bayley's my pick too. Look, I think what you have is you've laid a good foundation for Becky versus Rhea Ripley, and that's going to take place at WrestleMania. That's going to be a fantastic match. What are you doing with that other women's title? How do you build an angle for that? And I think working Bayley into that with the win at the Royal Rumble to take on Io Sky and really separate that group. We've already laid the groundwork. We already have the foundation. This is the way that you connect the dots. This is the way that you get there. I had Bayley typed up in my pick before you said anything. So we both have Bayley. I think that is probably the odds-on favorite to win this, and I think it'd be a great choice. For me, if it's not Bayley, I would probably end up going with Becky Lynch, and then if not Becky Lynch, my third would be Jade Cargill. And that was kind of how I had my hierarchy picked. It was Bayley, Becky, and then Jade. I actually flip-flopped a little bit between Becky and Bayley just because of the storytelling aspect of this. But I think to help solidify where we need to go for WrestleMania, I think Bayley is the obvious choice here. Now, I'm assuming that when we go to do the men's, it's going to probably be the same as well. We've got Bobby Lashley, CM Punk, Cody Rhodes, Drew McIntyre, Gunther, Shinsuke Nakamura, 24 other contestants who are going to show up. Maybe we get to see The Rock, the guy who is now part of the TKO board, and we'll get into a little bit more of that in the news and notes section. Or maybe we get John Cena, or maybe Hulk Hogan teased a return. Maybe we get Hulk Hogan in this. So there are a ton of possibilities. I'm going to go with Cody Rhodes on this. I think there's been a lot of smoke. I think there's been a lot of diversion techniques. I think Cody Rhodes finishes the story. I think Cody taking on Roman Reigns at WrestleMania, that is where the money's at. That is where the story needs to go. That is where we need to, that is the next step in the evolution of this storyline. I think you can do the whole Rock head of the table thing. You can do that after WrestleMania, or you can do it before WrestleMania, and you can do that with Roman Reigns having the title or not having the title. The title is not important at that stage or in that match. I think you would do a disservice to Cody Rhodes. You do a disservice to the long story that we have told for over a year now with Cody if he is not the winner of the Royal Rumble and he does not get to complete that story. So I'm going Cody Rhodes. All my money is on Cody Rhodes for this. Who do you have?
Okay. I'm going to go different. I don't think back-to-back. Look, I'm up by 3. So if you get the extra point, I still guarantee myself a tie because the next event will be the February event, Elimination Chamber, and I'll guarantee myself.
We'll have like an AEW one as well.
Okay, well, so there's still a chance. But I think that you have a massive star that has come back to the company. I think that Elimination Chamber always offers an opportunity for the winner to have a title match. So I would be shocked if you have CM Punk come back and he doesn't win the Royal Rumble. Like, really, what's the value of bringing a superstar back only to not have him be in the marquee event? Now, it does kind of derail my plans and thinking a little bit because Seth on Raw said that he's going to take some time. Obviously, he's going to retain. He's going to keep his belt. He's not being stripped, but he's dealing with an injury. And I'm sure you'll detail that in the news and notes. But I can't sit here and tout CM Punk as being the megastar, being the draw, the money guy, to have him show up at the Rumble and lose. Now, you could set up the next feud moving forward by the person that eliminates him, Gunther or whoever it may be. My outside the box would be Gunther because of the way they teased it on Raw. You had him win it last year, and you could kind of be have a shocking situation. But for me, give me CM Punk because I think the crowd would absolutely love it, and you can still get to WrestleMania with Roman, even if Cody Rhodes doesn't win the Rumble.
Do you think that we get one of those weird Royal Rumbles where you end up with 2 winners?
No.
Maybe CM Punk, Cody Rhodes double eliminate each other and they both touch at the same time, and it's always awkward and never really works out the way it's supposed to.
They did that in '94, and everybody talks about it like as a possibility online. I read that, and I was like, no, you need a clear winner. You need to have a pay-per-view that's not this dirty and messy. I think you could shock people and have somebody completely different, like a Drew, like somebody else that nobody thinks is going to win. Maybe a new star that comes to the company. But in my mind, right now, it really makes no sense company-wise when you have CM Punk, who has just been frustrated that he never got his WrestleMania moment, that he can finally stand on the microphone and say, I get to pick, and I'm going to take my sweet-ass time to decide. It could be Roman. It could be Seth. I'm going to take my time and decide and keep it moving. So I think the opportunity will present itself for Damian Priest maybe to kind of cash in against Roman Reigns, but it's going to be a failed cash in. If they want to do a way in which you get this briefcase off of a guy that kind of nobody thinks is ready and is not 5 months away anyway, maybe you have a little surprise in that angle. But in my mind, CM Punk's the draw. You have to raise the stock. Cody Rhodes is established. He's He's money. You got to establish CM Punk as somebody I need to pay for.
I would disagree with what you just said. Look, I think CM Punk comes in and he's already a guy that you have to pay for. But I get what you're saying as far as storyline purposes go with CM Punk winning. It'll be interesting. I do pick this as our main event. I think the Men's Royal Rumble will be the main event.
Yes, sir.
So just to recap, we both have Logan Paul defeating Kevin Owens. We both have Roman Reigns retaining against AJ Styles, LA Knight, and Randy Orton. We both have Bayley winning the Women's Royal Rumble match. And then we differ here in the men's. You've got CM Punk. I've got Cody. They cut a hell of a promo on Monday Night Raw when they faced off against each other. It was probably the best part of Monday Night Raw. For a go-home show, it was kind of the shits, but that promo between the two was fantastic. So it'll be interesting to see where we end up. Like I said before, I trail you by 3 points. That's a lot, and the time's running out on me. So I really got to start making some ground up here. You lead 11.5 to 8.5. Let's move on to some news and notes. You ready for some news and notes?
Hit me with this week's professional wrestling news and notes. What made your list?
So just to touch base on it real quick, Seth Rollins has a grade 2 MCL sprain. He's not going to give up his belt. He's going to hold on to it. He's planning on wrestling at WrestleMania. We'll see what happens. Gunther and him had a nice back and forth. Gunther flubbed some of his lines and messed up the date that the Royal Rumble is taking place on, seeing how he feels it's taking place on Sunday. We'll see if he shows up on Saturday. But he's going to keep his belt. I don't foresee him wrestling over the course of the next couple of weeks. So it doesn't look like you're going to have any champions defending their belts over the next couple of weeks. So it should be an interesting build to WrestleMania. Now, speaking of Monday Night Raw, it has a new home. Starting in January of 2025, WWE's flagship broadcast, Monday Night Raw, will air on the streaming service Netflix. According to Andrew Zarian of Wrestling Observer, the deal between the two super companies has Netflix paying WWE $5 billion over the next 10 years, with an option for Netflix to extend for an additional 10 years and to opt out after the initial 5 years. Per the press release on Tuesday, January 23rd, 2024, from TKO Holding Group, Netflix will also become the home for WWE shows and specials outside the U.S. as available, inclusive of Raw and WWE's other weekly shows, SmackDown and NXT, as well as the company's premium live events, including WrestleMania, SummerSlam, and the Royal Rumble. WWE's award-winning documentaries, original series, and forthcoming projects will also be available on Netflix internationally beginning in 2025. Now, locally here in the United States, we will still be using Peacock until 2026. So if you're looking for premium live events, you will have to go to Peacock. And if you want to watch anything on the WWE Network, you will have to use Peacock. After 2026, the belief is that it will then transition over to Netflix. Now, the one big issue that has yet to be worked out is where Raw will be airing between the end of the NBC contract and the beginning of the Netflix deal. The current contract with NBC Universal for the airing on the USA Network is set to expire at the end of October of 2024, leaving more than a 2-month gap between the weekly show on Netflix. So it'll be interesting to see what they do. The assumption is that there will be some type of a handshake agreement where they will be allowed to continue to air on the USA Network for those final 2 months before they transition over to Netflix. Now, while TKO is announcing a deal for Raw, they're also locking up The Rock. Yes, The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, has joined the board of directors for WWE's parent company, TKO. This is what we were alluding to earlier when we were talking about Vince McMahon. With this new deal, he has also received full ownership of the trademark for The Rock. The Rock would say via a press release, being on TKO's board of directors and taking full ownership of my name, The Rock, is not only unprecedented, but incredibly inspiring as my crazy life is coming full circle. At my core, I'm a builder who builds for and serves the people, and Ariel Emanuel is building something truly game-changing. Now, WWE is making more changes on their commentary team, and this one, the Doc absolutely loves. It's been no secret that the Doc is not a fan of Kevin Patrick, real name Kevin England. While in a move to appease him, WWE is reportedly set to replace Patrick on the weekly SmackDown commentary team. Patrick started with WWE as a backstage interviewer in 2021, but had the stints as the lead announcer for both Raw and SmackDown since October of 2022. WWE recently had Patrick working with both Corey Graves and Michael Cole, which was meant for Cole doing double duty each week in an attempt to boost Patrick's progress. But after a couple of weeks, they went back to just Patrick and Graves, and it sounds like Graves is out. On Wrestling Observer Radio, Dave Meltzer said Kevin Patrick is gone unless something changes. I don't know the details. I don't know who's going to be replacing him. I'm not surprised. Like I said, I'm not surprised. Corey Graves has been totally carrying the SmackDown announcing. I don't know who they'll bring in. Could be Vic Joseph. Nick Khan likes to hire sports people, but the problem is announcing sports and announcing wrestling are very different. Jimmy Smith did a good job, but that's because he announced real fights and tried to announce wrestling in a real fight way. Now, Michael Cole will be at the desk for Friday Night SmackDown, but he is not believed to be the permanent replacement. We will see what takes place with that when that comes. On Thursday, WWE did announce that Patrick had been released from his WWE contract. So he is gone. You can now celebrate, Doc. And that's going to do it for this week's wrestling news and notes. Happy Royal Rumble, everybody.
Absolutely. Look, we don't wish harm on nobody, but at the same time, we truly believe that you have to be able to resonate with the audience, and it just takes time, and I'm just not certain that the fan base really understood what this guy was going to deliver. I think that his, commentary felt forced. It wasn't original, and I just think that it felt like an individual who was trying to do wrestling. That's why Vic Joseph, guys like Corey Graves, guys like Michael Cole, they get it. Pat McAfee with his bombastic attitude. It just felt like the Scottish-British dude just kind of never really resonated. Never with me. I never really...
He was Irish.
Okay, yeah. I never really remembered anything about him. I don't think that he had a call that you go, oh my God, you remember the winning? Nothing in his tenure, a match.
I always like how you like totally minimize him. You're like the British guy, the other guy, the SmackDown guy. It's never like Kevin Patrick. You never call him by his name. And you always get his nationality wrong.
Because
you totally hate him.
No, I didn't hate him. It felt like, okay, this person is being forced in a situation and into a thing he wasn't good at. It's like, let's take the guy that's good at interviews that we got a little bit of rub on and let's put him on television. That doesn't work. I mean, the WWE has really been missing a lot when you look at their announce teams and they keep switching it over. You just need a former wrestler and a guy that's a trained broadcaster that can enunciate and speak English and has some passion. It's not that difficult.
Jimmy Smith did a fantastic job. I really like what Jimmy Smith did.
Yeah, so I look at it.
Maybe we get Mauro Ranallo back.
They got to figure it out because they keep changing teams every 2 years, and it feels like a setback. You need quality announcers. That's how you build your brand, build your characters, and create moments. So we're all sorry. Best wishes in your future endeavors, Mr. Kevin. And maybe he'll get back to, maybe he'll go to AEW and get the necessary training that he needs to in order to do the job at the highest possible level. Make sure you follow Adam on Twitter at AdamRSCROZ. Follow the network at Detroit Podcast. Let us know if you got different winners, if you think the Royal Rumble has to turn out in a much different way, if you think AJ Styles or LA Knight is primed or Randy Orton primed for an upset, let us know. Hit us up. We'll be following all the way through the pay-per-view at Detroit Podcast Saturday evening. Make sure you tune in, and let's hope that the card creates memories. Let's hope Tampa Bay shows out, the surprises, everything that we love about the Rumble. This is the kickoff to one of the biggest WrestleManias in history. So let's go. Let's see what happens. And we can't wait next week to fire up the microphones, turn on the mixer, turn on the lights for the next edition of the Doc and Jock Wrestling Podcast.